Be'ezah Hashem Yisbarach, we begin a new Masechta, Bava Metzia. This is part of the Masechtas. We learned in Gemara Bava Kama, Kulin Ezikin Chada Masechti, that according to one opinion, Bava Kama, Bava Metzia, and Bava Basra are really all one Masechta. It was divided into three sections. According to another opinion, it's three Masechtas, but it's all these Masechtas speak about the halachas of Dinei Mamanis. In Masechta Bava Kama, we learned the halachas of Dinei Mamanis, that a person owes money as a result of something that he did that was wrong. Whether a nizikin, whether geneva, gezela, that was the inyanim of that Masechta. In this Masechta, it continues to speak about the inyanim of Dinei Mamanis, but not regarding nizikin, but Dinei Mamanis in relation to finding a metzia, and certain halachas of Dinei Mamanis in relation to kinyanim, in relation to loans. The famous Perek here in this Masechta that speaks about the halachas of ribis in relation to a loan. And then the halachas regarding money matters that relates to shaila pekadon, when a person borrows an object or gives a pekadon to somebody. And then all the halachas of Dinei Mamanis in relation to hiring a worker, the obligation of his work and his job, whether he can back out from his work and so on. So that's the theme of this Masechta. Okay, let's begin. Sagt der Heilige Mishneh, Shnayim oichzim betalis. Two people grab onto a talis. One person says, I found this talis. The other individual says, no, I found this talis. This individual says, it's all mine. And the other individual says that it's all mine. So the Gemara will explain here why the Mishnah says a double lashon regarding what each one of them claims. So what's the halach in this case? Who do we give this talis to? So this individual swears that I don't have in this talis less than half, which is mine. And the other individual also swears that I don't have in this talis less than half. And then after they swear, they divide this talis. Which of course means not that you just cut the talis in half, but that it's a partnership and then they can sell it or do whatever they want with it to divide it. The Gemara here will explain why is it necessary to have a shvuah. Why don't we just divide it? Since we can't determine who it belongs to, so then maybe we should just divide it. What's the necessity for the shvuah? That will be explained in the Gemara at length. And the Gemara will also explain the lashon that's used here in this shvuah. Ein loy ba pachas mechetzia. They're not each swearing that half is mine. The ein loy ba pachas mechetzia. The Gemara will explain that as well. There's also a famous discussion that Tosfos and all the Rishonim speak about. Why in this case do we paskin yachleiku, that we divide it? If you don't know who it belongs to, so then maybe Bezin should just say, don't leave us alone. We have no way to paskin, and the halacha should be as it says in other places, kol olam govar. The Gemara in Bava Basra says a case of two people that were arguing about a boat that was floating in the sea, and none of them had a raya that it belonged to them. So the Gemara says, over there, we're not going to split the boat. Kol olam govar. They can go and fight it out on their own. Whoever's stronger gets it. So why don't we apply the same thing over here regarding this talis? There are a few different answers in the Rishonim. Tosfos' answer is, this is what it's mashma from Rashi as well, Shnayim oichzin, because they're both grabbing onto it. So therefore, the fact that each one is holding half is in itself an indication that half is his and half is his. A non-sahadi, that half belongs to each one of them. Whereas in the case that it discusses in other places where you have something where none of them have any chazaka or any tfisa in it, over there, the halacha is kol olam gava, that they fight it out on their own. So the basis of the psaktin over here is the oichs, the fact that they're holding on to it. Also, there's the famous pshat of the Baal Shem Tov on this Mishnah, which the Rebbe speaks about Ba'arichas Gedola in the kuntris of Shnayim Oichsin. There's the Rishime from the Rebbe that explains this Mishnah. What it means, Beruchni, is that the Shnayim Oichsin betalis, that the Mishnah speaks about, is the mitzvah. The talis is a mitzvah that a person fulfills. And there are two people that are grabbing onto this mitzvah. There's the person that actually fulfills the mitzvah. And then there's someone else that was mashpia on him, that was mekarev him, or that taught him how to fulfill the mitzvah. And they gave him the inspiration to do the mitzvah. And both, the person doing it and the other person that is inspiring him to do the mitzvah, are arguing and saying, we're both holding on to this talis. Each one is claiming that the reward of this mitzvah belongs to me. And the Mishnah is saying that they're both right. Yachloiku. That each one has a portion in the fulfillment of the mitzvah. Without the inspiration, the mitzvah wouldn't have gotten done. And on the other hand, this individual is the one that actually does the mitzvah. That's what the Mishnah is talking about. So the Mishnah says, Shnayim oichzim betalis. It doesn't say Shnayim shahoyu oichzim betalis, that this is an incident that happens, but it just says it as a fact. Shnayim oichzim betalis, because this is a fact of life, benegay to a person in this world that is doing things and is also getting influence from others. It is always a situation of two that have a connection to the mitzvah or the Torah that a person learns. Right to the next case, the Mishnah says, in a case where one of them claims that all this talis is mine, and the other one claims that half of it is mine. So here, in this case, the one that claims that half of it is his, regarding half of the talis, he's admitting to the other person that it's his. So their argument is only on one half of the talis. So in such a case, the halacha is the one that says that it's all mine. He swears that he doesn't have less of an ownership in this talis of 3 parts of it, of 3/4 of it. And the one that says that only half of it is mine, he swears that he doesn't have less than 1/4 of it, because we're only going to be splitting that half that they're arguing about. So one gets 3/4 and the other one gets 1/4. And then one takes 3/4 and the other one takes 1/4. Similar, another case, 2 people are riding on an animal. One is riding on the animal and one is leading the animal. Each one of them claims that they found it and it's all his. So here as well, the halacha is, each one of them swears that I don't have an ownership that's less than half of this animal. And we divide it. It's really the same halacha as the beginning of the Mishnah. The Gemara will explain what's the chiddush in this case over here. The main chiddush is regarding the case of reichiv and manig, that one of them is riding on the animal, the other one is leading the animal, that they both have a similar claim of ownership. Each one claims that they found it. One says he found it and he's manig, and the other one says he found it and he's reichiv. Both of them are a kinyan. That's we'll see in the Gemara. That's the chiddush of the Mishnah. Now says the Mishnah, Bizman shehem moedim, if it's a case that they both agreed to each other, that they picked it up together, or sheyesh lem eidim, or that there are eidim that they both picked it up together. So here, in this case, when each one says that I found it, and there's eidim, or they agreed to each other that they picked it up together, then chalkim b'lei shvua. Then you split it without a shvua. This also seems to be a very simple halacha. Obviously, if they agree, or if we have clear eidim that they picked it up together, for sure you divide it. The Gemara will also explain what the chiddush in this is.
Whoever says kulu shali, why doesn't shvua kulu shali? Why chet shali?
Oh, the Gemara will explain. The Gemara will explain this. Why this lashon of the shvua? We'll see. Sagt the Gemara, why does the Mishnah say the double lashon? Zeh oimani mitzisiya, v'zeh oimani mitzisiya. And then it says, if each one says, I found it, it means that it's all mine. So why does it add that separate thing again that he's saying kulashali? Listen, chada, let it say one. So the Gemara at first tries to answer that even though it says a double lashon, but nevertheless it really is 1 point. Chada katani, you really have to read it all together. One of them is saying, I found it myself first, and therefore it's all mine. And the other one says, no, I'm the one that found it first, and therefore it's all mine. But if it's really all 1 point, so then let the Mishnah just say, Ani mitzasiya. Let it say that he's claiming that he found it. It's self-understood that he's saying that it's all his. So still, the question remains, if it's all 1 point, why does it add another lashon here? Answers the Gemara, no. If the Mishnah would just say the lashon that I found it, hava minah, then I would say as follows: My mitzasiya, what is this person's claim when he says that he found it? It means reisiya, that he saw an item on the floor, and that's what means he found it. And even if he didn't come to his hands, he didn't pick it up. I would think, based on that lashon of the Mishnah, that his claim is that he saw it, and the Mishnah says that that's a good claim, and he gets half. And so even though it's just Riyah Ba'alm, he just saw it, he would be kinda this item of hefker just by Riyah. So that's the Havamina that I would think. This Havamina here, that you could acquire something just by seeing something, that the Havamina here is only regarding hefker. Maybe a Metzia, which is hefker. Over here, the ear could be kaina. If it's something that belongs to someone else and he's selling it to you, just looking at it wouldn't have the kayach to be kaina. But there would be a havamina regarding something which is hefker. If you're the one that looks at it first, maybe that should be kaina. So therefore, Tana Kula Shali, that Tana adds that the person is claiming not only that I found it, but that he adds Kula Shali. Kula Shali is saying the B'ri'iyah loikani. I found it, which means I saw it, and I grabbed it, and therefore it's Kula Shali. That's what the Mishnah comes to teach. How could you say that? I would make a mistake to think if the Mishnah would say that each one is claiming just that mitzasi, I found it, that would mean that I just saw it, not more than that. And that's kaina. But for Ravina said, that's the Marshal's Gersa here, umatzasa. The Torah in the pasuk where it speaks about an aveda, so there it says that you see there's an aveda of your friend, asher toivad mimenu. It says there in the pasuk, this is an aveda that belongs to your brother, to another yid. Asher toivad mimenu, it was lost from him, and then the pasuk says umatzasa, you found it. So that extra word umatzasa, Ravina says dasoy liyadeh mashma. It's coming to say that you picked it up already. It's in your hands. If you remember, we learned this actually in the Gemara Bava Kama. The Gemara Bava Kama there says that we learn from this pasuk that the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda applies by an Aveda of a Yid and not the Aveda of a Goy. And the Gemara there says, maybe that's only if you didn't pick it up yet, but once you picked it up, then you have to return it both to a Yid and to a Goy. So the Gemara says, no, but it says in the pasuk, U'mitzasa. U'mitzasa means you did pick it up. And there the pasuk says, Achicha. Even after you pick it up, you only return it to your brother and not to a guy. So we clearly see that the term mitzasa and similar in the Mishnah, mitzasiya, means that it's already in your hands. Says the Gemara, answers the Gemara, in yes, mitzasa dekra. The expression of a mitzasa that it says in the pasuk, the asali yade mashma. It's an extra word, and there it means that it came into your hands. Umiyu tane lishna dalman nakat. The Tana of our Mishnah, when it says each one is claiming, I found it, ani mitzasiya, it's using the terminology that people speak in. When people speak, what do they say? When you see something, when you discover something on the floor, you say, I found it, even before you pick it up. Even if it didn't come to your hands. Therefore, if the Mishnah would just say the term mitzasiya, I would say that you acquire it just with seeing it. Therefore, Tana Kula Shali, therefore the Tana of the Mishnah adds the words Kula Shali, that their claim is not just that they saw it, that's what found it means, but it means that they actually picked it up in their hands. This with seeing it, you're not kaina. Frag the Gemara, if so, Velisni, let the Mishnah say, Kula Shali. Just saying mitzasiya would lead to a mistake, that it means that if you see it, you're kaina. So let the Mishnah say that each one of them, their claim is Kula Shali, that it's all mine. It's not necessary to say that each one is saying that they found it. So if you say Kula Shali, that means that I picked it up, it's mine because I'm holding it in my hand. Kula Shali properly, without the term mitzasiya that leads to the mistake that seeing it is kaina. Says the Gemara, no, that wouldn't be enough either. If all the Mishnah would say is that each one is claiming it's all mine, which over here we're talking mean that he picked it up, it's in his hands. Kula Shali is mashma, that it's in his hands. But nevertheless, hava mineh, I would make a mistake and think, ba'alma, diktane mitzasiya, in other places in this Masechta, where it says that a person says that he found it, so there the term mitzasiya would mean b'riyah ba'al mekani, that you could be kaina with Re'iyah. I wouldn't know this idea that Re'iyah can't be kaina. In this Mishnah, it's saying Kula Shali, which means he picked it up already. But in any other place where it just says Mitzasiya, maybe there, it would mean that he just saw it, and you just kaina just by seeing it. So therefore, Tana Ani Mitzasiya. The Mishnah here uses the term Ani Mitzasiya, which means that I found it, which you could make a mistake to think that it means that just seeing it is kaina. V'hada Tana Kula Shali. And then it adds to say, a double lashon to say that he's also claiming it's all mine. The Mishnah Yisere Ashmi'inon, so now that it says an extra double lashon here, from this I learn out, that you're not kaina with Re'iyah. The Mishnah is explaining. Mitzasiya means dafke if you picked it up and you have it in your hands. From this we understand that there's no kinyan even for hefker when you just see something. Okay, but now the Gemara asks, after all of this, the Gemara refutes this pshat. The Gemara asks, umi matzes amris. How could you say the basis of this entire pshat here that chada ketani, that the Mishnah really is all speaking about one case? It's just specifying these l'shainas to teach me this halacha that Re'iyah is not kaina. But v'ha zeh v'zeh ketani, the Mishnah divides it into two cases. It says twice zeh, each one of them claims mitzasiya, and each one of them claims kula shali. It says Ze Mani Mitzasiya, V'Ze Mani Mitzasiya, and then it says Ze Mekula Shali, V'Chulu, which is Ze Mekula Shali. So it sounds like we're talking about two different cases, two different claims regarding this object. So therefore, Amirav Papa, V'Yitei Rav Shimi Barashi, V'Amri Lo Kidi, others say Kidi, which was a name of a Chacham. That's what Rashi says in another place. That yet the Mishnah is talking two different cases. Reisha b'Metzia, the first case of the Mishnah, Ani Mitzasiya, is talking about an item that was found, and V'Seifa b'Mekach HaMemker. And then when it says each one is claiming Kula Shali, each one is claiming that I'm the one that bought this object from this seller. So that's the two different cases that they're arguing about. And the Mishnah is telling me regarding both of these cases that you divide the talis, and in both of these cases, you only divide the talis after each one of them swears she'en li ba pachas mechetzia. Rashi here points out that the Gemara chose as the second case, the case dafka of Mekach HaMemker, when each one claims that they bought it. And the Gemara does not say an example of a different case where you have a talis and each one claims Aniya Raktia. I'm the one that made this garment, I wove the garment. Why not? So Rashi says, because in our case where each one of them claims, I wove this garment, there's one of them that's definitely a liar. Can't be that they both wove it. If each one claims, I wove this entire talis. In such a case, there's no din of yachleiku. This is what's called a vadai ramai. The Gemara is going to talk about it also on Daf Gimel. In a case where there's a definite liar, Bezin will not divide it between the two of them, and a definite liar will gain out of this. In the case of Ani Mitzasiya, and also each one claims kulishli, as the Gemara explains now that it's Mekach HaMemker, there's no definite liar here. Each one of them thinks that he actually grabbed it first. What happens over here is, what could have happened over here is, there was a Metzia that was discovered on the ground, and two people saw it at the same time, and they both rushed to it and grabbed hold of it, and each one thinks that he actually grabbed it first. So there's no definite liar here. The same thing with Mekach HaMemker. Two people, as we'll see soon, the Gemara will eventually explain, we're talking about two people, each one thinks that they bought this object. Each one approached the seller, paid him for it, and each one thinks that I'm the one that paid the seller and he agreed to sell it to me. And so each one, there's no liar, each one thinks that he taka has the right to it. So therefore, in this case, you say achleiku, both these cases. Yeah.
So then you got back to Kasha from the beginning.
Which is?
But Metzia only one Lashon. I mean, if it's say only Metzia, would think that Metzia B'riya Alakaina.
Oh, so you have to say that Ri'iyah is not Kaina, is understood even without the Mishnah teaching it to us. There's actually a Taisus here that says that there's a Mishnah later in the Masechta that teaches the halacha that Ri'iyah is not Kaina. So you don't need our Mishnah to teach us this din that Ri'iyah is not Kaina. It's already learned out from a different place. Sagt the Gemara, now why does Mishnah have to teach us this halacha of yachloiku with a shvua regarding both of these cases? So you need both the cases, Metzia and Mekach HaMemker. The Itana Metzia, if the Mishnah would only say the case regarding them arguing who found it, and here they have to swear and divide, Hava Mineh, I would think to say, Metzia, only by a case where the argument is who found it, here, who did Amar Rabbana shvu alei. This is the case, and this is the reason why Chachamim imposed upon them to swear about this. Why? Because this is a case, Mishum de Meiri va'amar, each one of them could be Meiri hetet himself. Each one of them thinks, it's not a big deal that I claim that it's mine, even if it's not mine. Because he says, Chavroi lav midi chasaba. My friend, it will not be losing anything that he paid for if this Metzia won't end up by him. It's something that he just found. So Ezel v'itvis, I'll grab it after him, and v'espalik ba'dei, I'll claim that I found it first, and then we'll divide it amongst us. The person thinks to himself, the other person is anyways not losing out of this. So therefore, in such a case, because this is a kind of a claim where there's a moira heta, where a person thinks that it's not something that I'm really confiscating of something that my friend owns or paid for, in such a case, Chachamim imposed the shvuah before we give this person half of this talis. Regarding an argument between two people who bought for this, who paid for it, in such a case you can't say that your friend is not losing out when you go and grab it and claim that you bought it first. So therefore in such a case maybe there would be no need for a shvuah. Now Rashi points out, as we'll see in the continuation of the Gemara is soon going to say that really by Mekach HaMemker the case is that both of these individuals paid for this chayfetz to the meicher. And the meicher agreed to sell it to one person, and then he agreed to sell it to someone else, and it's not clear who he agreed to sell it to first, and they both paid for it. And whoever you're going to give the talis to, the other person is going to have to be reimbursed. So really, even by the case of Mekach HaMemker, there's also no real loss here, because the other person is going to be reimbursed for this. But nevertheless, he paid for it. It's something that he needs. It's something that he if he paid for it, it means it's something that he needs. So in such a case, when you're grabbing it away from him, there's a loss that the other person has that he now can't have what he needs. By the Metzia, it's not that way though. On Metzia, you punt your luck, you find a gold watch on the floor. Not something that you expected, not something that you need. In such a case, the person is Maida Heter and says to himself, let me grab it for myself. That's why Ve'er Chachamim imposed the Shvuah that before he gets half. On the other hand, the Gemara says, there's a svara to say the opposite. If the Mishnah would say, the case where they're arguing who bought it, and here they have to swear, and then you divide, maybe I would say, Hasam huderamu rabbanan shvua. It's only there that Chachamim say that each one of them has to swear. Mishum demayri v'amar, because here there's another mayda heter. Each one themselves says to themselves that what I'm doing, or one of them says to himself, what I'm doing is not so terrible. Why? Chaviroi dami kayoiv. My friend paid for this. V'anad dami kayehivna. And I also paid for this. It's just not clear who paid first and who really is the real buyer here. So now that I need this for myself, I'll take it for myself. I'll grab it and I'll claim that I bought it first, and I'll take it for myself. My friend, he'll get his money back from the seller, and then he'll go and buy it somewhere else. So in the end, he's not going to lose out anything. Whereas by the Metzia, if you're grabbing the Metzia and your friend is not going to get it, so he's not going to get that Metzia at all. A Metzia is not something that you can say, oh, go buy the Metzia somewhere else. A Metzia is something that happens once in whatever. You find the Metzia, but there's no one else you can buy it from. So you're taking something away from him. So therefore the Mishnah had to say both of these cases, that in both cases you have to make a shvuah, because in both cases there is this svara that the Gemara is saying now, as you see here. The reason for the shvuah comes out from this part of the Gemara. That's because there's a certain maida heter. When a person goes and grabs something and claims that it's either that I found it or that I bought it, person has a certain maida heter that my friend is not losing out so much, and therefore he grabs it. That's why Chachamim imposed this shvuah. Soon the Gemara will explain other reasons that it could be for this shvuah, as we'll see. Okay, now the Gemara asks, Mekech or Memker? So we just said that the case of each one claiming Kula Shali is a case where each one of them claims that he bought it first. So, the Gemara, so why are we just listening to their claims? Why can't we see the seller? Who's the one that paid him? And let's trust what the seller says. Who's the one that he got money from? Rashi explains, this is before, the Gemara already said before that the case over here is that both of them paid. But the Gemara spells this out. The Gemara now is starting from the beginning. And we think that only one of them paid. Says the Gemara, if only one of them paid, then you can trust the seller to tell us who it is that he sold it to. Rashi here brings from the Gemara in Kiddushin that this is the halacha, that the Bava Metzia, the seller, has the trust to say who exactly it is that he sold it to. And that's even if the object is not in the seller's hands anymore. If only one of them paid him, so then he's believed to say who it is that he sold it to. So therefore, in our case, why don't we ask the seller who he sold this object to? Answers the Gemara, the case over here is the naket mitavayu. That, as we said already before, both of them paid for it. One of them paid him and there was an agreement. He was the first one that he sold it to. And the other one was against his will, but he paid him anyways. In such a case, we don't know who it is that he paid the seller with his agreement and who was against his will. So Rashi explains, the Lashon of the Gemara is v'lo yadaina. What it means is, even if the seller will come along and say, this is the one that I agreed to sell it to, we're not going to trust him. The halacha of trusting a seller who he sold it to is in two cases. Either if the object that he's selling is still in his possession, then he's believed to say, even if both of them paid him, and one paid midas, one paid balkarcha, but if the object is still in his hands, he's believed to say who he sold it to. When the object is not in his hands anymore, like in our case, the two people are holding on to it, in such a case, the seller is only believed to say who he sold it to if one of them paid him. If two people paid him, one midas and one balkarcha, and the object is out of his hands, we don't trust him to say who he sold it to. He doesn't remember. We don't trust this. Zakta Gemara Leime, shall we say? Now we understand what the cases of our Mishnah is. There's the case of Metzia, there's the case of Mekach Memker, but now the Gemara is going to focus over here on the Shvuah. The fact that the Mishnah says you can't just divide it, you have to also make a Shvuah, and both of them have to swear that Ein Liba Pachas Mechetzia, and then we divide it.
Case that one paid, he doesn't remember who paid it.
Again?
If one person paid, he doesn't remember who paid it.
It's also possible, and a chanami. But the Gemara says that over here, even if he remembers, what the Gemara is saying is we don't have to make an akimta that he doesn't remember. Even if he remembers, but if they both paid, then he's not even trusted. Shall we say that our Mishnah does not follow the opinion of Bananas? Why? The Bananas. If we follow the opinion of Bananas, Ha'omar, Bananas said as follows. Keitza. How could you say such a thing? Elu ve'elu bal l'dei shvu shav. When you have two people swearing, so then somebody is swearing falsely. The case that Banana speaks about is in the Gemara Masechta Shavuos, when you have a person that goes and tells a storekeeper, I want you to pay my workers for me, and then I'll reimburse you later. And then the storekeeper comes and says, I paid your workers already, reimburse me. The workers come to this person and says, we never got paid. Now the person is stuck. He's going to have to pay twice here now. He's going to have to pay his workers because they claim they never got paid, and he's going to have to pay the storekeeper that claims that he did pay them. And the Tanakama there in that Mishnah says, the storekeeper will swear that he paid the workers. The workers will swear that they never got the payment. And after they both swear, now this balabas will have to pay both of them. On that, Benana says, how could you impose on both of them a shvua? They both should swear when somebody is swearing falsely. This is not a shvua min HaTorah. This is a shvua that's a takana derabana. How would Chachamim institute a shvua for two different people when you know that somebody is swearing falsely? So seemingly in our mission, it's the same thing. When each one is swearing that I have an ownership in this talis that's not less than half, somebody is swearing falsely. So why would Chachamim make a shvua in such a case? So this doesn't fit with Bananas' opinion. Says the Gemara, no, it's not necessarily true. Afilatayim Bananas. Our mission that says that they both swear fits with Bananas' opinion. Why? In that case, with the storekeeper and the worker, and each one is claiming, he claims he paid, and he claims he didn't get paid, there somebody is swearing falsely, definitely. In our case, though, in our case, when each one swears that I have an ownership no less than half of this talis, it could be that nobody's lying. I mentioned already before this Indian. It's actually possible that when they both discovered this Metzia on the floor, they both rushed to it, and maybe they actually both did pick it up at the exact same moment. The achleiko of our Mishnah may actually be true, may actually be the case of what happened. So when each one swears, I have ownership no less than half, that might actually be the truth. So therefore, Chachamim imposed this shvua on both of them. By Mekach Memker, it's also possible that they both bought it. The Rashi here says, Mekach Memker, it also could be that he agreed to sell it to both of them, and which basically means that he agreed to sell half to him and half to him. So it could be true. Shall we say that our Mishnah does not follow the opinion of Sumches? And the Gemara here again is focusing on the need of the Shvuah here. The Hikah Sumches, because if we follow the opinion of Sumches, Sumches said, anytime you have money that's in doubt, there's a doubt whether you owe this money or not, what do? Cholkin. You divide this, and this is without a shvua. We had this in the Gemara in Bava Metzia as well. There the Gemara said the case is when you have a shoshan agachasapara, an ox gored a cow, and there's a ubra betzida, there's a fetus on the side that's dead, and it's not clear whether the ox gored and killed it or it just died on its own without the ox goring it. So this is a case where there's a suffix whether you owe the money or not. So there the Chachamim say the halach is amaytz mechaveri olav haraya. You want to take money out of the Baal Asher, you have to prove it. But Sumcha says, no, chelken, we divide. Since there's a suffix, whether your ox Gordon damaged, so chelken. And without a shvuah. So over here in our Mishnah it says that we divide when there's a suffix, who's the owner, and over here it says with a shvuah. So seemingly our Mishnah is not Sumchis. Says the Gemara, so what are you going to say? Rabbanon. Our Mishnah follows the opinion of the Rabbanon. But ha'amri, don't the Rabbanon say, ha'maitzi mechavere olav haraya. Chachamim say that if you want to be maitzi from your friend, you have to bring a raya. A shvuah is not good enough. You have to bring out, what's a raya? A raya is always when you have edim to prove that something's yours. Our Mishnah says we divide and you get half without edim. You get half just by a shvuah. So how could our Mishnah fit with Rabbanan? So the Gemara explains, no, wait a minute. Hi, let's see. If you'd want to say that our Mishnah follows the Rabbanan, Hasam, in the case where the Rabbanan said their halacha by Shoshan Agachasapara, the Leitafsir Tarvayu. It's not a case where two people is holding on to the money that's in doubt. One person is the muhsik. One person has the money in his pocket. So there, Amr Rabbanan, the Chachamim say, that you're trying to take money out of your friend by claiming that he damaged you. You're going to have to prove it with Eidim properly. Now, shvuah is not good enough. In our case, where both of them are holding on to it, each one of them has somewhat of a chazakah in this talis, but not strong enough because it's two people that are holding it together. So in our case, palgila b'shvua, you could divide just with a shvua. So our Mishnah that says a shvua is enough of a proof that your claim is valid, that could follow the opinion of the Rabbanan. But if you would want to say that our Mishnah follows sumches, and that's a kal v'chomer. Hashta. Now, if in the case over there by Shosh Nagach Chesapara and Bava Metzia, the leitafsi tarvayu, it's not two people that are grabbing onto this talis. One person has the money in his pocket, and nevertheless, sumches says chelkin below shvua. You take half of the money out of this person's pocket, and he has to pay half of the damage, even without a shvua. Here, when these two people are holding onto this talis together, like kol shekain, isn't it a kavachayim? Definitely, you should say that sumchus would agree in our case that they divide without any shvua. So the question remains that you could still say that our Mishnah should say that our Mishnah is not follow sumchus's opinion that says that you must have a shvua. And says the Gemara, afilatayim sumchus. No, I can tell you that our Mishnah that requires a shvua does follow sumchus. Why? Ki sumchus shema v'shema. The whole idea that sumchus says that you split money which is in doubt, that's when you have two people that are arguing about this, but none of them know for sure what happened. There's the shema v'shema. The Baal Asher says, maybe my axe damaged you, maybe not, but maybe not. And the other person says, no, but maybe yeah, but nobody knows. In a case where nobody knows, then sumchus says we divide without a shvua. Aval body of body, but in a case where each one is claiming with certainty that this is mine, loy, over here Sumcha says you can't just divide without a shvua. Over here each one has a strong taina that he's right, which contradicts the other person. So you're going to have to make a shvua to back up your claim to show that what you're saying is true. In such a case, Sumchas would say you need a shvua. So again, body of body, loy omar. Sumchas did not say in this case that you could divide without a shvua.
What's the shvua going to accomplish?
That it gives a bigger validity to your taina. You have to contradict the other person in a stronger way. You can't just claim stamazai. Because the other person also has a taina as body, so you're going to have a more valid backup to your taina with a shvua. And then you can get half. Says the Gemara, okay, this is all according to one opinion. That sumchus that says that you divide without a shvua is only when it's a shema v'shema, when no one knows. But however, Rabbi Baravona says that Omar Sumchus, afil a body. Sumchus says that you divide money that's in doubt without a shvua, even when both of them are arguing body. This is later on in the Masechta over here. The Gemara says if it brings according to one opinion, even if you have two people arguing, each one is saying this is definitely mine. Nevertheless, we split it between the two without a shvua. So what are we going to say? Why in our Mishnah do we require a shvua according to Sumchus? Says the Gemara, afilatayim sumchus. We could say that our Mishnah does follow sumchus. Because ki ama sumchis, when did sumchis say that there's no shvua necessary? Heicha de ikke drara de memayna. In a case where there's a drara de memayna. Rashi's pshat for drara de memayna is when there's a loss of money on each one of these people that are arguing over here. So again, sumchis says you divide without a shvua in a case where there's a drara de memayna, when there's a loss of money. I like the case of Shosh Nagach Chesapara. There's going to be a loss of money to each one of them. He's losing his fetus that's dead, and he wants to get reimbursed for this, or the other one has to pay for something that was damaged. So there's a loss of money over here. In such a case, Sumcha says you don't need a shvua. That's Rashi's pshat. According to Taisus, Drara de Memayna means a situation where we can see a doubt regarding the story that happened here, even without their claims. There's a suffix to the Bezdin when we just look at what happened without, over here when Shosh Nagach Chesapara, and the way it happened and the birth of this fetus, it's not clear if it was born before and therefore it died on its own, or it was born after and it died because the shor was Nagach de Para and the fetus was still inside the Para. It's something that on its own there's a doubt. In such a case, Sumcha says you divide without a shvua. But in a case where, according to Rashi, there's no chesaron of mammon, as we explained already before regarding the Metzia and regarding the Mekach HaMemker, that nobody's going to be losing out anything over here. By Mekach HaMemker, he's going to get reimbursed. By the Metzia, it's something that he just found. If he's not going to get it, so he's not gaining anything, but he's not losing anything either. In such a case, you have to make a shvua. The Gemara right away asks in this answer, "V'lav kal v'chaymahu." But isn't this a kal v'chayma to say that in our case for sure you shouldn't need a shvua? If in the case by Shoshan Agachasapara, where each one of them stands to lose money, real money that he owned in this case. And another point is, in that case, it's also, we're dividing something where it's either Reuven is right or Shimon is right. Either your ox gored this fetus and killed it, and you should pay it all, or it did not gore, and you should not pay it all. The whole yachloiku there is not a kind of yachloiku which could be true. It's a compromise, because we don't know, but it's not something that could actually have been the reality of what happened. And nevertheless, Alma Sumcha says that we apply this psak din of Yachloikum. That you divide this below shvu without a shvu. So if so, hacha, in our case, the leka d'rada. Over here, number one, nobody is losing out from this. Whether in the case of Mekach Memke, whether in the case of Metzia, nobody is losing out. And also, Rashi says this is an additional point. When we split it, it's something that could actually be the case. Could be they found it together. Could be they both had the agreement of the seller to buy it. So lekol most definitely the splitting in our case of this talis is much simpler and much easier than in the case of Shoshan Agachasapara. We should split it without a shvua. So the question is, why would Sumcha say in our case you need a shvua? So lekol it's still a kavachayim. The Gemara says it's still a question. Why in our case what would you say according to Sumcha is that you split but only with a shvua? Okay, so the Gemara answers, let's just finish off over here this point. Afila teim is sumchis. No, I could say that our Mishnah follows sumchis. Usually sumchis says you split without a shvuah. But in our case, shvuah zu midrabanan. The fact that in our case you swear before you split it, Chachamim instituted to swear. Why? As Rabbi Yechanan said. Rabbi Yechanan said, and we'll see this later in the Gemara, shvuah zu takanas Chachamim here. Here Chachamim instituted to swear, because if not, what's going to happen? If you're going to say that the halacha just is that if two people hold on to a talis, and then you split it, so then anybody can just go and grab a talis that your other friend is holding on to, and then you claim, I found it, I have it, it's mine, I bought it, and now you're going to force to split it. So this is so easy for a ganev to go and grab something from another person, and he just gets half. So therefore, Chachamim imposed the shvuah, and then a person is not going to want to swear falsely, and therefore people are not just going to go and grab talesim from another person. That's the takana of Rabbi Yechanan. It's interesting that Yishayim point out that the Gemara brings up here this takana of Rabbi Yechanan, and the Gemara does not go back to the svara that it said in the beginning of Beis Amud Beis to explain Sumchis. The svara that it said in the beginning of Beis Amud Beis was the svara of Meira Heter. That in this case, there's a concept where a person is Meira Heter because the other person is not losing out so much. Here the Gemara says a little bit of a different idea. That we're afraid of ganovim, of a person that will just go and grab something because he sees it's so easy to get it to split. So it seems like the original svara of the shvuah of Meira Heter, the Gemara has charata from that for some reason. And the Gemara here brings the svara of Rabbi Yechanan to protect from ganovim that go and just grab people's talesim.